man, it's just tough to see that defense go out there and put forth that type of effort and have zero offensive production to speak of. They lost by 8, but that last touchdown was a garbage touchdown.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Odd Coaches Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Keith Adams, and with me today for this Throwdown Thursday edition is my point guard, G. Sumner. G, how you doing, man?
Oh, man, feeling good, feeling great. Ready to talk
right.
football. Let's do it.
So on this Throwdown Thursday edition, segment 1, as always, we're going to go around the territory, okay? And there's a lot going around in the country. In segment 2, again, I'm glad I got G here. We're going to talk about Michigan and Coach Harbaugh, and where there's smoke, there's fire, or maybe not. And in segment 3, we'll talk about things strictly for entertainment purposes only, but I'll just say I wasn't very entertained this week. But first, let's get to the ACC. So Florida State has a legitimate shot at the college football playoff if they stay undefeated. North Carolina blew it big time at home, but good for UVA. They bless their hearts. We're glad they're out there every week. But man, G, they blew it, and Clemson's playing spoiler. So the ACC is all about Florida State now for the rest of the season. They are their best chance at relevance. Any thoughts on the ACC? I'm still mad that North Carolina blew that thing.
Congratulations. North Carolina really did blow the money yesterday. Like it's awful. I mean, and I was starting to believe that they were going to be a threat, not win it.
Be a threat. Oh, great term.
And so now that's out the window. But congratulations to Florida State. I wish I had seen that game play out with a healthy quarterback behind center in Duke. They were playing well, leading going into the fourth quarter. I think we got a problem. And then the quarterback finally just gave out, couldn't continue. And they routed them in that fourth quarter. So, yep, they did what they needed to do. You beat the teams in front of you. So keep finding a way to win. And, they're headed toward the playoff, it looks like.
We'll see. All right, in the American, the only team we have to care about is Tulane. They have a shot at the Cotton Bowl, so we're going to move on to the Big 12, where the only two teams we care about are Oklahoma and Texas. And Oklahoma almost laid an egg yesterday. Oklahoma State, BYU, and Kansas State are hanging around to mess it up. But the top two teams play for the title, and that's probably going to be Texas and Oklahoma. Then we're going to stop, G, at the Big 10. Okay. I like James Franklin. I'm a card-carrying member of the Black Coaches Association forever. Very hard to get these gigs. And every year, I am hoping, praying that Penn State breaks through, because he's our best hope for a black head coach to get to that national championship scene, similar to John Thompson, 1984, grew up in D.C., but you're not going to win a lot of games, G, if you go 1 for 16 on third down. It's just not going to happen. Okay. So Ohio State, they didn't play their best, and they didn't play their best in part because Penn State's defense is legit. That's a national championship level defense. But that offense, Vince Lombardi called a more progressive game than what I saw, and I'm not a football person. Any thoughts on Penn State quickly before we just go through the rest of the Big Ten? But, man, that one got me.
It went from this is what we've been waiting for. It's a 3-team Big Ten race to start the season, and now we've gotten it down to 2 teams. To your point, man, it's just tough to see that defense go out there and put forth that type of effort and have zero offensive production. To speak of. They lost by 8, but that last touchdown was a garbage touchdown. Man, just anemic offense, no creativity in the play calling. It was bad. I'll challenge your idea that Franklin's our best chance to get a BCA on that championship scene. You bet it's not happening this year, but out in Notre Dame, we got good coaching out there. So I'll see that. With Penn State having to go through Ohio State and Michigan every year, I would guess there before Penn State.
All right. And I have no problem with that piece. We'll talk about Michigan in segment 2, but I do want to conclude our Big Ten with our long national nightmare is over, to quote Gerald Ford. Iowa lost again, so I don't have to worry about any Iowa scenarios going to the playoffs. Thank you, Minnesota. Go row the boat or ride the boat or in the boat or whatever. All right. So HBCUs, it was Howard's homecoming on the ESPN family of networks. Good win against Norfolk State. South Carolina State, North Carolina Central won this week. And in the SWAC, FAMU, Alcorn State, and Southern will be in the mix. Gee, did you go to Howard's homecoming this year?
Nah, man.
Are we done with Howard's homecoming?
I finally aged out of that one, so I did it. It's not been a good year for black school homecoming, so yeah, I passed on that one.
Well played.
But congrats
I can't
on the
run
win.
that fast. Okay. Group of 5 talk. Conference USA. Liberty is 7-0. Keep an eye on Jacksonville State, and that's about it. Maction, the MAC. Toledo beat Miami of Ohio, so they're in first place and in line to be talked about with the Cotton Bowl, but look out for Ohio. And in the Mountain West Conference, Air Force beat Navy. They're 7-0, but they're without their quarterback. Fresno State and UNLV are both 6-1. So keep those in mind. And with the Sun Belt, James Madison is 7-0. They're going to mess up everything. And that archaic rule about when you transition, you shouldn't be, you're not allowed to go to bowl games. Let's get rid of that. So I'm rooting for JMU to be undefeated and say we should be somewhere. Let's get JMU and like Jacksonville State in like the Newcomers Bowl or something like that. Georgia State is 6-1 and several 2-loss teams in the Sun Belt. Sun Belt plays good football, fans. So if you want to check out some good action, check out the Sun Belt. G, I want to talk to you about Notre Dame. They had a bye this week. That's why Marcus went in my mind this week. Hopefully they can continue to play well and get to a New Year's Six bowl. I don't know. All right, G, we're going to stop at the Pac-12. Washington holds off Arizona State, so they're still in line.
They barely held on. Yeah.
They're still in line for the college football playoff. Oregon and Utah are now 6-1. Archie Griffin will keep his streak of being the only 2-time Heisman Trophy winner because Caleb has laid an egg and USC has lost 2 straight. So Washington is the top team in the Pac-12. Do they have a shot, or are we going to roll with Florida State as that Big Ten SEC team to get in?
I think they absolutely have a shot. I mean, it's the deepest conference in football this year. With that Oregon win is legit. They've, Washington State, USC, UCLA, you got some quality teams out there. So if they're able to keep the party going and run the table, I think they've got to be in that mix in the top 4.
All right. And now SEC, that's football. There's good, and then there's Alabama good. Okay. Alabama is not Alabama of old, but they're still better than you. And Tennessee gave a great fight. And thank you for playing. So Alabama is still Alabama. Ole Miss and Missouri both have 1 loss still. There's a lot of football left to play. But at the end of the day, it's Georgia, it's Alabama, and everybody else just kind of hang around. Gee, any thoughts on the SEC before we close this segment?
No, I think I'm going to resist the temptation to talk about the Army LSU game, and we'll just settle at this is Alabama, Georgia at the end of the day.
All right, so fans of segment 2, another batch of news comes out of Michigan that nobody wants to hear, and we're going to sneak in Michigan State in that one. We'll be right back on the Our Coaches Podcast.
The reviews are in for Dr. Keith Adams' book, Finding the Balance, My Personal Journey to Academic and Athletic Success. College professor and student-athlete academic expert Dr. Lisa Rubin said, "There is nothing out there like this book, so I do hope people will pay attention and give it a read." Former George Mason standout Folarin Campbell said, "Consider this book an opportunity to work directly with Dr. Adams just like I did. I assure you that there will be something you can take away that will be useful to you throughout your personal journey. Ryan Waite, a recent college graduate who is a software engineer, said, "I like how the book is based on research, which makes it good for general students as well as student athletes." The book serves as both a memoir to Dr. Adams' 30-year academic and athletic career, as well as an instructional guide to assist student athletes, parents, coaches, teachers, and administrators navigate through the challenges of finding a better balance between academic and athletic success. The book includes over 15 personal stories and anecdotes from Dr. Adams, along with numerous former players and colleagues from a variety of sports and endeavors. You can order your copy at www.ckasaveproject.org. From the main page, simply click CKA Save Project Services and order the Find the Balance book. For more information, contact Dr. Keith Adams by email at cka@ckasaveproject.org.
Welcome back to the Odd Coaches Podcast. In segment 2, we're going to hang around the state of Michigan, where there's smoke, G. So Michigan football analyst Connor Stalions has been suspended as the NCAA investigates an alleged sign-stealing operation by the Wolverines. Athletic Director Warde Manuel announced the suspension with pay last week, one day after the analyst was identified as a person of interest in an investigation with Michigan, violating NCAA rules by scouting future opponents in person at games, sources told ESPN and other media outlets. And the NCAA has stopped in-person scouting since 1994. So here are the details, G. A source said that the Wolverines had used a, quote, elaborate scouting system to steal signals from future opponents since at least 2021. At issue is the NCAA bylaw that says off-campus in-person scouting of future opponents in the same season is prohibited. Sign stealing itself is not technically against the rules unless it involves electronic equipment to record and inform players or coaches of signals during the games. Teams are given access to a great deal of film in advance of matchups in order to scout the on-field football product. Michigan is already under investigation. For penalties with recruiting. Jim Harbaugh has already faced a in-season suspension. And of course, Harbaugh last week denied any knowledge of the alleged scheme. But again, he served a 3-game suspension this year related to recruiting violations. And a violation by a member of his coaching staff could trigger another charge of head coach responsibility, which is a potential level 1 violation. He going back to the NFL. Jay, before I go crazy, give me some thoughts that you have on this situation.
Everything coming out of Michigan right now reads what we've seen with the Patriots, with the Houston Astros. Like, you don't want to be labeled that team that's trying to get unfair competitive advantages. We know you're good. We know you're good. You've been good, just like those teams were. So now we've got to frown upon and take a closer look at it and judge everything you've done to this point once this kind of stuff comes out. And like you said, Jim Harbaugh is just making his case for a job relocation to the NFL, because I can't see. I know he signed the extension after they finally cracked the playoff, but you know, he might have to get out of there. It might be time for a new regime just to clean things up.
CG, if you recall, Harbaugh couldn't win the big one. Still hasn't won the big one, but he went through that stretch where he couldn't beat Ohio State, and now they're starting to win. And it kind of, if you're looking at the timeline, corresponds with these allegations. Okay, again, they're allegations. Scouting, game planning, it's hard. As somebody, as a coach who took pride in scouting reports, there's a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of film, you got to look at any and every advantage. Okay, Michigan football hadn't been winning big games. Now they're winning big games. So as we leave Michigan and transition to Michigan State, here's some advice for admin, free of charge, from Dr. Adams. Do nothing. Let everything play out, because it's on your coach, not you. You are not going to have to give back one check from your full stadium, your concession stands. And hey, this week, you've been looking into selling alcohol at your stadiums for events, for football, basketball, and so forth. So, again, allow the process to play out. Don't send an email. Don't do anything. Say, we're going to turn that over to the investigation, and you're going to give us the recommendation of what we should do, and we're going to follow the recommendation. So now nobody can ask you a question. All right. Speaking of Michigan, Michigan State, I do want to close out with what do you guys do? So at their football game, fans are filing in, they're having their fun, eating their hot dog or their bratwurst or whatever. And on the scoreboard, they post a trivia question about somebody we're not even going to mention, but you shouldn't post that. Why would you do something like that? So Michigan and Michigan State, let's just be better. Let's just be better. Gee, any advice for the Michigan State scoreboard operator?
Find a new profession. They say they blamed it. They said it was a third party company that they've hired to post their trivia questions who will no longer be used. But you got to do whatever you can to backpedal from this one. It's just terribly wrong, insensitive, irresponsible, bad timing. Yeah. It's time for that Michigan winter to kick in. They need things to cool off. Stay quiet.
Yes. Boring wins more than it loses. And you're too exciting right now, Michigan. Let's be boring. So when we get back in segment 3, we'll talk about things strictly for entertainment purposes only. And again, I wasn't entertained. We'll be right back on the Odd Coaches podcast.
Why should student athletes use the CKA SAVE Project academic and athletic consulting services? Over the past 15 to 20 years, colleges, universities, professional sports teams, business organizations, and others have increased their use of consulting services to improve their decision-making processes and results. Over the same time, the athletic and academic landscape has changed for high school and college student athletes as the NCAA has raised initial academic eligibility requirements for student athletes while decreasing the number of transfer restrictions. Former college student athletes have noted that they were academic and athletically unprepared for the rigors of college. Let the CKA SAVE Project's close to 30 years of academic and athletic experience help guide student athletes to increase success as we work to help student athletes achieve the goal of obtaining a college degree. For more information, contact Dr. Keith Adams by email at cka@ckasaveproject.org.
Welcome back to the Odd Coaches podcast in segment 3. We're going to do that OCP top 5 first. Again, our focus is on the college football playoffs and major bowl games. So don't hit me with what about this, what about that. We don't live in that world. Number 1 is Georgia. Okay. Number 2 is now Ohio State, because say what you want, they're still facing tougher opposition than Michigan. Michigan hadn't had a real game yet. Okay. And quite frankly, neither did Penn State, but that's another story. They've been playing, can't play UMass to get ready for Ohio State. So 3 is Florida State, because they have they're going to already have a victory over LSU, and they're going to close the season playing Florida. So they'll have 2 SEC wins, and they would have run through the ACC. That gets them in clean. Okay. So if FSU wins out, I think they can't stop them. Number 4 is Michigan, and whoever wins that game at the end of the season will roll through Iowa in the Big Ten championship, and they're going to be in. And then 5 is James Madison, and as I said, they're undefeated. They cannot participate in any bowls unless there's not enough teams to win, but they're winning games. They're 7-0, and I'm just keeping the attention on them just because I like them, and we actually went to their football camp, prospect camp. On the outside looking in, Oklahoma, Washington from the Pac-12, Air Force for the Cotton Bowl, Liberty for the Cotton Bowl, and Texas for the Big 12. You remember we booked it that Oklahoma and Texas will play in the Big 12 championship, and Oklahoma will do the honor since Texas gave them the win, and that's how Texas gets in. All right. Gee, any thoughts on the top 5 for the college football playoffs that we have?
No, I like where you're at. I like putting Ohio State over Michigan after coming off the win over Penn State, beating another top 10 team. Michigan didn't do anything to lose that spot, but give credit to Ohio State. And I don't think it really matters because that'll play out here in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
Same thing with Oklahoma and Texas pretty much already played out, so we just got a Big 12 game, and then Washington and Oregon. They'll be on your outside looking in, but Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State are your top four, and Washington will sneak into that top four once Michigan or Ohio State lose, assuming they can continue to win.
Now, I didn't put them in this week because I want to see Georgia play next week. But there is a scenario that Alabama runs through, beats Georgia in the SEC championship because their tight end is out, and that guy can play. And then Georgia would go from number 1 to number 4, and Alabama goes in, and that really messes everything up because you're not going to keep Georgia out. So if that happens, you're going to have 2 SEC teams in and a lot of belly aching. And so what? That's how it's going to work out. So we're going to keep an eye on the fancy surgery that the tight end had, and we'll go from there. Season-long bets. I have Clemson over 9.5. They're done. But I will remind myself that I did have Clemson at least getting 10 wins. That didn't happen. Tulane over 9. They're 6-1. Keep on going. I got Maryland over 7.5. They're 5-2 right now. But if you peek at that upcoming schedule, it's going to be hard to count 3 wins, sir.
It's
tough. Hard to count 3
wins. It's going to be tough to get to.
I'm hanging on Maryland every week now. And Rutgers is good. Okay, Rutgers is good. All right, Texas over 9.5. They're 6-1. Troy over 8. They're 5-2. I do have your Notre Dame Irish over 8.5, and they're 6-2. So I think I can count 3 more wins for Notre Dame.
Notre Dame's going to get there.
I think I can do that. There. Utah is 6-1. And I have them over 8.5. So counting 3 wins is going to be tough. And their starting quarterback's not even going to play this year. So they're going to play with the backup all year. And Tennessee over 9 wins. It's a long shot for them to get a push. So anyway, this week, fans, just like week 0 and week 1, I was 0-5. I am at a 33% clip for college football, and I am down almost 80. Wife's still not mad because we're talking about 8 weeks, so that's $10 a week. But
I didn't go 0 for 5, Coach. Who were your 5?
Here's how we're doing it, G.
Like to hear it goes.
Plus 4.5. I went all in. Salute again to Penn State's defense. They played their hearts out, and their offense sputtered. I went in with Penn State over 45.5 over under because I thought it was going to be an NFL game. I thought it was going to be like, 30-24, something like 28-24, something of that nature, and nobody's offense got off. My 2-play didn't work out. I did take the bait, Robert Abney, Iowa under 30.5, and that's always hitting. And then Wisconsin under 40.5. They let me down with a late touchdown. They got the win, but I didn't. Okay. So my 3-play, Rutgers took care of business. And I'm keeping an eye on Rutgers, G, because we cover the league. We cover the country every week. Rutgers keeps winning. And they were like, oh, Indiana's going to beat Rutgers. I'm like, Rutgers ain't Rutgers, man. They're going to win some games. Alabama took care of business. And then it was Clemson versus Miami. So the thought, G, was let's take some teams with a little closer spread so we can make a little more money on the money line. And Clemson blew it, and they lost in overtime. And then my upset, instead of picking Utah over USC, because that was my second game, I'm like, let's push the chips in the middle. Let's celebrate James Franklin. Let's get this thing going with Penn State. And watching the game, watching it, I'm like, you're in it. You're in it. And they never got in the end zone. And you're right. That late touchdown, man, that didn't do anything for anybody. So that's how I did it. But that's why it's called gambling. And it's strictly for entertainment purposes, obviously. But yeah, I wasn't very entertained this week. But there's always next week. So, Jay, I am going to be in Viva Las Vegas next week as we tape. I hope you can join us. You might see some plots or something in the background. I will find a spot. So if you are in Vegas, reach out to the boss and let's go to Circa and watch some games. But here are the notable games for Week 9. Oregon versus Utah. Can't wait for that, and they're going to Utah for that one. Duke, Louisville. Clemson, NC State, because now Clemson's in a position where they're going to be in one of them Week 1 bowls. If they keep going at it, they're going to be in the Weed Whacker Bowl. South Carolina versus Texas A&M. Texas A&M, Jimbo, you better win some games, bro, because they got Texas oil money and they might buy you out this year. Georgia, Florida, and I don't think they call it this anymore, but it was formerly known as the world's largest cocktail party. I don't think Florida's going to win, but we'll try it out.
No, they certainly will not.
BYU going to Texas. Uh-oh. You better beat them early because BYU hangs around. Pitt versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame's trying to get a New Year's Six Bowl. Tennessee versus Kentucky. Colorado versus UCLA. Colorado needs to win in the worst way because they're not bowl eligible yet. And ODU versus James Madison. Keep winning, Dukes. Keep winning. Any games next week that tickle your fancy or excite your soul? Jermaine Jackson reference, because I like Jermaine.
Man, well, you are alone on that one. But shout out to a Jackson references on this fine broadcast. But my games are Oregon, Utah. Even though I like Utah. I like their defense with backup quarterback. I don't see them being able to keep pace with Oregon. But Duke Louisville is another one I'm kind of looking forward to. I mean, it's not the ACC is pretty much decided at this point, but those are two solid teams. So just in the spirit of games to watch, I'll be looking forward to that one.
All right. So fans, on behalf of my point guard, G. Sumner, I'm Dr. Keith Adams saying thank you for listening and or watching the Odd Coaches podcast. Subscribe and share to us wherever you get your podcasts, and we will see you on the sidelines. Till next time, take care.
The Odd Coaches podcast is sponsored by the CKA Save Project. The CKA Save Project is an industry leader in providing student-athlete academic and athletic support. From assessing student-athletes' academic and athletic skills, to measuring and monitoring student-athlete academic progress, to improving student-athlete time management and organizational skills, the CKA Save Project provides wraparound services for student-athletes from middle school through college. For more information, visit us on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org or schedule a free consultation with Dr. Keith Adams by emailing cka@ckasaveproject.org. We hope you enjoyed today's show. The Odd Coaches podcast drops new episodes every Tuesday through Friday on most weeks. Make sure you subscribe to the Odd Coaches podcast on Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow the Odd Coaches podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Odd Coaches. Follow Dr. Adams on Twitter and Instagram at CKA Save Project. In addition, follow Coach Mike Francis on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Franchise, spelled Coach Franchize. For more information about the CKA Save Project, please visit them on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org. See you next time on the Odd Coaches podcast.